This is the Media Police Post, broadcasting from the Fort Hall School of Government. In this show, we police the state of truth in the Republic. And because truth is communicated to us by journalists and analysts, we have made it our civic duty to put it to the test. We advance from two confirmed truths about the media. One, and according to Roger Stone, the media is either evil or lazy. And for the most part, it is both evil and lazy. That is why the truth, their truth, must be put to a test.
And two, that journalism is verified gossip. In fact, what is presented to us as news analysis is gossip that has been verified by journalists. This gossip has to be grand truthed. We will assess the state of truth in what they submit to the Republic, and we will pass verdict on what is true and what is not. For the record, we are not journalists, we are thinkers, we are not lazy or evil, and we do not verify gossip. What we give you is the truth that sets you free.
On today's show, we will discuss ideas that reflect unformed and uninformed opinions, and ideas that made you stupid. Narratives that fell into the cognitive trap of we see things as we are, not as they are. Narratives based on conjecture history, and those that smack of enveloped journalism. Karibuni, Ms. K and JK.
Thank you. So this week, the opinion piece by Makau Mutua published in the Daily Nation got me thinking. The piece was titled, "Let's Avoid the Apocalypse." And Professor Mutua is right when he says that the 2022 election is an unprecedented volcanic cocktail mix. He's also right when he predicts that an apocalypse in the style of 2007-2008 is breathing down our collective necks next year. And while the article and its warning should spur us into collective action, I think that Professor Mutua was presumptuous about two things, and wrong, rather mistaken, about one. Professor Mutua's first presumption is that the voters are the ones who decide who will be elected president, and that in 2022, Raila Odinga may not be rigged out. Professor Mutua clarifies that this does not mean Raila will win. It just means that the counting will be in true maths. So according to an apocryphal quote attributed to Joseph Stalin, those who cast the vote decide nothing. Those who count the vote decide everything. This sentiment was echoed by British playwright Tom Stoppard when he said that it's not the voting that is democracy, it's the counting. So it's not the voters who decide who will be elected president, it's the deep state that decides. And in 2022, Raila has the deep state counting the vote in his favor. This means that all the iniquities of the deep state that they visited on him in the past will be visited on his opponent. Professor Mutua's second presumption is that because Mr. RUTO almost ran the state, he knows how the deep state works and has his factotums in there. The deep state is located in Harambee House, and the DP operated from Harambee House Annex, which some may argue was created as a marketplace for political busybodies. But they're not the same. In fact, it is possible that the Hustler Nation Intelligence Bureau is as deep as the DP's deep state goes. The real deep state, the one that's located in Harambee House, is nebulous and fluid. It morphs. What it was in the 2017 election period is not what it is now. So even if, for argument's sake, we say that Mr. RUTO was once a key part of the deep state and he uses the 2017 methods in 2022, he'll be surprised because they will not work. Finally, Professor Mutua is mistaken when he says that to prevent the coming apocalypse, Kenya must be as transparent as possible to give legitimacy to election. This is because, by Professor Mutua's own admission, the man from Sugoi has been having Freudian slips and has been visibly angry on the campaign trail. So even though Raila has historically been a formidable opponent in presidential elections, the true question in Professor Mutua's piece is, will Mr. RUTO concede if he's declared the loser? Well, as Robert Greene once said, you cannot recite poetry to a man brandishing a sword.
Indeed. And today I would like to discuss actually a column that ought to have been written, but in fact wasn't. Fast forward to 2022, what does it look like? So building on the Macau argument, we're told that there is a bullet and the person to be hurt is Kenya. If we begin from the principle of Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And it stands that in any field of endeavor, when things are left to themselves, things always go from bad to worse. So there are two scenarios I would like us to explore. Scenario one, it's August 10th, 2022. Kenyans have voted and the poll results are streaming in. Days later, results are announced, and the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya is not William Ruto.
Sounds accurate.
What happens to the country when Ruto loses the election? While I may not have a definitive answer, we do have a short history. One that tells us that Raila, despite his Mawe democracy, has enough grace to concede. Having lost many elections, the country tends to go back to normal. And even with the anomaly of 2007, Raila lost but was not caught in the ICC dragnet. On the other hand, a Ruto loss in 2022 feels unpredictable. And using history, we see that in 2007, despite not even being a presidential candidate, he ends up being a chief suspect in ICC cases. And now we are told that there's more to this than met our eyes then. Which brings me to scenario 2. What will happen to the country if an ICC warrant of arrest for Ruto comes out just before the 2022 election? What will the Kalenjin nation do? Will Hustler Nation bring the country to a crisis? I do not bring this up to fearmonger, only that it is a shame that after 13 years of nearly collapsing country has not fixed the things that caused the crisis of post-election violence. Now, the ICC factor cannot be ignored, given how well choreographed certain events seem to be. From the timing of Paul Gisheru's case to the fact that the presiding judge in Gisheru's case, Miatta Maria Samba, was the officer that collected evidence in the Ruto Sang case, or that Ruto's former lawyer Karim Khan is now an ICC prosecutor. This probably has international actors and goes beyond Ruto. Maybe it is about the stability or having Kenya as this anchor state. But it's important to be forward-looking because a new high-stakes ICC case could be a serious trigger for Kenya. And to guarantee peace, we must first simulate just how bad it can get. Now, the art of war teaches us, do not rely on the likelihood of the enemy's not coming, but on your own readiness to receive him. Not on the chance of his not attacking, but rather on the fact that you have made your position unassailable. So Kenyans, you cannot simply wish that the enemy will not show up, no matter what he looks like.
I'd like to pick up from there. Last week on Thursday, the Daily Nation front page boldly asserted, and I quote, "Fresh trouble for Ruto at ICC." The byline to the headline, still on the front page, stated, and I quote, "For the first time, Deputy President William Ruto is named as being involved in coordination of witness interference that corrupted his case at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. The second in command risks being charged with corruptly influencing witnesses." When you open page 4 of the Thursday Daily Nation, the article highlights that the latest brief signed by Deputy Prosecutor James Stewart and submitted on November 22nd says, the evidence establishes that the pattern of witness interference was conducted for the benefit of and in coordination with William Samoei Ruto, end quote. Now, we at the Fifth Estate have prosecuted this issue on several occasions on this panel, and it is an issue we have analyzed severally at the Fort Hall School of Government. So the revelations did not surprise us. What did, however, surprise us is that after this story was carried on the front page of The Nation on Thursday, there has been virtually no political commentary on it by columnists since then, especially over the weekend. The Chief Prosecutor's Office at the International Criminal Court is leading a case in which the Deputy Prosecutor, Mr. James Stewart, is basically stating that there is now evidence that William Ruto was involved in interfering in the judicial process by interfering with witnesses in a case where he is charged with crimes against humanity. Even if we put to one side the question of why an innocent man would be interfering with witnesses, the question we present today is this: why is there reluctance by columnists and political commentators to discuss the ICC angle insofar as it relates to 2022? The sitting Deputy President, who seeks to take over power in less than a year, is a person of interest and has been identified as a key player in a case that is live and active at the International Criminal Court. If an arrest warrant were to be issued against William Ruto, will the IEBC still have him on the ballot? And the difference between this time and in 2013 is that then he was a suspect. In this case, he may potentially be sought as a co-perpetrator if Gisheru and co are found guilty, especially since the court has allowed evidence from the Ruto case to be used in the Gisheru case. As you digest that, we find it ironic that on the same Thursday when the Daily Nation carried a front page story about Deputy President interfering in the international judicial process, that same Thursday, Both the Standard and the People Daily carried front-page stories of William Ruto and co. confronting Chief Justice Martha Koome, head of the judiciary, telling her to step down from her role in the multi-agency technical committee on electoral processes. Internationally, he's being accused of interfering in the judicial process. On the same day at home, he's reported as trying to tell Kenya's top judicial officer on how to do her work. What we discern is that this is a man who thus far has played his cards in such a way that the law is now stacked against him. And the house of cards he has built is about to come toppling down when it encounters the law. Maybe the reason many commentators and columnists are silent on this matter in relation to 2022 is because they can hardly believe that this man has come thus far only to falter because of the law when he's a whisker away from the helm of power. But let us remember, in the words of Martin Luther King Jr., the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Maybe this is even why it would appear that the universe seems to be conspiring against him. Why do we say this? What are the odds that lawyer Paul Gicheru, Ruto's high school classmate in Kapsabet High, who is accused of Article 70 offenses against administration of justice, and doing all that he did for and because of Ruto, surrendered to the ICC on 3rd November? It wouldn't take a wild imagination that when something like this happened, William Ruto would call his lawyer. That is what anyone would do. Who was his lawyer? Karim Khan, Queen's Counsel. But as fate would have it, Karim Khan was one of 4 people who had been nominated to replace Bensouda as ICC chief prosecutor. Karim Khan, however, other than formally being Ruto's lawyer, is a British citizen, a Queen's Counsel. You can guess where his loyalties lie: with the crown. And you can bet international capital and world powers have both a stake in our politics as a geographically strategic country, and at the same time they have a guiding hand in international institutions such as the ICC. So what are the odds about 90 days after Paul Gicheru, Ruto's high school buddy, surrenders at The Hague, Ruto's lawyer wins the election to be the next chief prosecutor to replace Bensouda? Interestingly, the person who came second in that election, Mr. Fergal Gaynor, was previously the lawyer for the victims. But the coincidences do not end there, and we can't help but wonder how many coincidences are enough to amount to a conspiracy. Because in addition, as GK mentioned, Judge Maria Samba, who has been the presiding judge in the Paul Gicheru case so far, was involved in the initial ICC investigations, long before she was an ICC judge. Meanwhile, last week, DCI Kinoti was elected to the Interpol Executive Committee, which is the governing body that supervises Interpol operations. What would this mean if an arrest warrant were issued against William Ruto? We are just asking questions. And we would like to invite Professor Makau Wamutua, who was once so passionate about ICC issues, to tell us what he discerns in his crystal ball.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us on the Media Police Post. See you next Monday.